Bracketing is one of the features that is on the D90, and it's really extensive the way they've done it. What bracketing means is that you're going to take a series of images, usually 3 images is what people take, but that's variable in the camera, and you can change the exposure. This would be the standard type of bracketing, exposure bracketing, where the camera takes one picture below, one picture above, and one picture normally set to the right lighting conditions, the exposure. Well, why would you use this? Well, say you're taking a picture of the president, and he's doing the handshake for literally a second and a half, and you've got to get a perfectly exposed picture, and you only have one chance. You can't say, well, I didn't get it, could you do that over? There's no way. So what you've got to do is set up your bracketing to take a number of shots and have it slightly shift the exposure. That way, one of the shots will get the perfect exposure. Now, if you're set to single shot mode on this camera where you're taking one shot every time you press the shutter, you're going to have to press the shutter 3 times. But if you do it on continuous, the images will happen automatically. So first of all, let's take a look in the camera and I'll show you how to set it up. I'm going to go back to here to custom menu setting here, the custom menu, and go to the right, and then go down to, I already did, go down to bracketing and flash, then go to the right, that's E, and then you got to come down over here to auto bracket set. This is the main thing. Now, the reason that this camera has more extensive bracketing than I have seen out there is that it allows you to go ahead and not only do exposure bracketing, but to do other types of bracketing. So here's auto exposure plus flash. It'll modulate or change the amount of flash on the camera and the auto exposure. Here's the traditional method where it's just changing the exposure value of the camera to over, under, and correct, taking 3 shots. Here's where it modulates or changes the amount of light coming from the flash only to change the exposure in the pictures. You can experiment with those 3 methods there, sort of variations on them, on each other. But then it adds white balance bracketing. If you want to, the camera will actually shift the tonal gradation of the picture from normal and then plus and minus. So you can experiment with that as well. And the digital bracketing over here where you can experiment with that. So you've got several options here that normally you don't have in a traditional camera, but and the D-lighting is totally unique too as well to the camera, so you have a double uniqueness there. So experiment with these, and like I said, the normal reason you use the traditional one of the first 3 is where you have a time when you have to get the shot right and you want to be able to experiment and shift the exposure just slightly, because you don't, if you only have that one chance, you know you want to have one of those pictures that's going to look the best for you. So let's go with AE only, OK, and the other thing to set on here is bracketing order. That would be what order the shots are taken in. So here we go. Meter means correct, by the way, here. So you can have the correct exposure, underexposed, overexposed, or underexposed correctly or over. However, it's sequence you want to take them. Meter, under, over makes sense for us today. And so we go back and let's take a look actually on camera 2 for a second over here. I just want to show you one thing. This is where the bracketing button is, right over here. It says BKT on it, and when you hold it in, let's take a look over here. I'm gonna hold it in, and I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in over here and show you. Right there, I want to refocus for you. There we go. I'm going to show you when you press that bracketing button, the screen goes blank. And what happens next is interesting, because when you use your command dials, your sub-command dial and your master command dial or main command dial, you can actually shift the number of frames and the amount of bracketing. So there's 0 frames. Even if you hold the button in, and right now you're not going to get anything but you're not going to get any bracketing. You have to check. You have to select an amount of frames. There we go. We can go 2 frames plus, 2 frames minus, 2 frames plus. We can, we'll put it on traditional 3 frame. Now we use the other control, and we can say how much do you want it to shift for the under and over frames. 1/3 of a stop, 0.7 of a stop, a whole stop, all the way up to 2 stops. So it's the number of frames you're going to shoot and the amount it's going to shift when you're doing this exposure bracketing. See this little symbol here? That means it's exposure bracketing. So I'm going to shift it drastically to show you the effect over here. Let's go back over to camera 1. and I will show you. I just point the camera. I'm on single shot mode over here. So basically, I'll take 3 shots in sequence. And then let's take a look inside the camera on cam 3. And you'll see, let's go back. Here's the correctly exposed one. Remember we did meter under over. Here's the correctly exposed. The second shot I took was the underexposed. The third shot is the overexposed. Now I really pushed it with 2 stops to drastically show you the effect here. Normally, if you were doing that presidential shot, as I called it there, you might shift 0.7 or even a stop would be maximum. So be sure that you got one that was just exposed just like you like it. So there's bracketing, and there's how to do it. You experiment with the white balance bracketing and the ADL bracketing, and it's just sort of personal preference. And when you find that a certain situation with the tone shifting or the digital light bracketing shifting, the digital light shifting bracketing is really totally unique for this camera. You may find occasions when you want to use that. So there's bracketing, and this camera has an extensive bracketing selection format.